session for an hour. So you're absolutely welcome to stay. It's probably a good idea, actually. But if someone feels they have to go, you must tell me. Because. You all going to stay? Because if someone gets up, you're going to... Oh, you'll have to leave. 1, 2.
And Leon as well. We are traveling together.
Who?
Leon, Jerry's.
Oh, I see. Okay. Whew. Wow. That looks really high tech. Gee whiz. Okay. So if you have to leave, come here right now. Mahaprasad. Oh, yes. Liam. Hare Krishna. Good boy. Hare Krishna. Haribol. So that's everyone, right? Everyone else will stay because, anyway, that's the end of the... We'll give you all at the end, don't worry. But now we're going to do questions and answers. And we have, from last week, we start with 17. I think we start with 17. And we've got, how many we got? We got 10, I think 12 or 13 questions or something like that. From where? Yeah, no, there's a couple, I'm including them. There's 10 from last week. We didn't have time because there was load shedding, which is going to happen also in about an hour from now here. So here we go. We have questions. Let us try and provide some answers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so here we go, devotees. First question. How important is it to hear lectures? Because I feel all right to read, but listening is difficult. Well, you know what? We get asked, not often, but it happens, exactly the same question, but exactly the other way around. How important is it to read? Because I'm okay listening to lectures, but reading is difficult. So, okay, I'll say one thing. If you prefer reading, then read. And that's it. Yeah. You can listen to lectures when you're personally present. That's good. But if you like reading, focus on reading. and really read seriously every day. Yeah. But, if you read nicely, then an attraction to hearing, listening, will arise in due course. In due course. Yeah, because reading such a powerful transcendental activity that it sort of dissolves away different types of mental problems we have, of all different sorts, anxieties and attachments. They all gradually get dissolved away by the practice of Krishna consciousness in general, and reading is a very, very important part of the practice of Krishna consciousness. So therefore I'd say, you know what I'd say? I'd say, make a systematic program for reading. Systematic means decide what book you're going to read now, and then read that book. And then what book next, and then read that book. Not skipping from this book to that book, and then another book, and then another one, and back to the first one, and then to the second one. We should be consistent and systematic with our reading. Okay, so next question. During festivals, flowers are sometimes showered on the deities. After doing so, can those maha flowers be thrown to the crowd? Or is it a seva aparad? Because the flowers will be walked over before they get cleaned away at the end of the program. Ha ha ha. Someone was obviously watching or was present for our Pushpa Abhishek. So anyway, yeah, it's a good question. It's an important question, actually. And we were informed of a pastime of Srila Prabhupada's when he was personally present. You remember hearing about that? Yeah, right. Some of you may have been around. Were you there? Yeah, I think the day of the Pushpa Abhishek, was it? Or was it? No. It was before. It was before. But okay, anyway, that's all right. Right, so Niranjan Maharaj was personally present when there was a Pushpa Abhishek for deities. And then, there's all these flower petals on the altar area. And then Prabhupada told the devotees they can start, sort of throwing them on each other a bit. And then Prabhupada, after a few minutes, said, more. More. I've got it right, yeah? Oh, Prabhupada took it and threw it at the devotees. Then he told the devotees to throw them around at each other and encouraged more or, okay, that's good, thank you. Yes, so in other words, it's okay. Don't panic. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's all right. Srila Prabhupada, it was in a Guru Puja to himself, and there were flower petals, and he threw some to the devotees, and then he encouraged the devotees to throw them at each other. So it's okay. If Srila Prabhupada did it or said to do it, that's acceptable. All right, next question. Was Srimati Radharani's husband's name Ayan or Abhimanyu? It was both. Yeah. Ayan, something like Ayan Ghosh. I think Ghosh is the family name. Yeah. But you know the system in Indian, well, South African Indian society, where someone may have a sort of traditional Indian language name, which may be, I think it's usually like their legally registered name. I know in many cases I've heard that. But then they have a calling name, right? Yeah, no, I mean, I've had a lot of experience discussing this with devotees. You know, when I first arrived in South Africa, I had not encountered, well, there was just one man in England. I was working with the Indian community in London, and it's like Durban, there's very big Indian community, and they would come to particularly Bhaktivedanta Manor, thousands of them. There was only one who used a Western name. His name was Charles Patel, and he was a very nice man, big supporter of the temple, gosh, extremely wealthy man. But he was the only one. I came to South Africa, and suddenly, there's no shortage of them, put it that way. And I remember just about the first one I spoke to, what's your name? Said, well, you know, my name is Krishna Gopal Govinda or Govinda. Krishna Gopal Govinda. But everyone calls me Fred. And you know, I can tell you, the first time I met an Elvis, I really thought, these people have lost it. I know a couple of Elvises. We had our bookkeeper here. His name was Ganesh, but he was called Elvis. So anyway, you know what Shakespeare said, right? What's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. But yeah, I remember I just arrived at Cato Ridge, where I stayed for 2 years, a little more than 2 years, when I first came. And I answered the phone one day, and this voice said, can I speak to one of the devotees who was apparently his sister? And I said, sure, what's your name? And he said, I am Sean from Ottawa. And I thought, wow, an Irishman from Canada. Really, that's what I thought. But then I found out that Sean, which is just one of the classic Irish names, yeah, it's a popular name, and Ottawa is on the other side of Durban. Okay, so Radharani's husband's name is Abhimanyu. But as a sort of a nickname or whatever you'd call it, he's called Ayan. Yeah. Okay, my father passed away a few weeks ago, and my mother a long time ago. Should I give Pindan in Gaya or in Badrinath? I suggest you chant Hare Krishna wherever you are. Yeah. Because it's too late. Well, first thing, if you were going to do some sort of ceremony, you should do it in Gaya if you're in India. You don't need to go to Badrinath. Gaya. But if you're not in India, or even if you're in India but you're a long way from Gaya, just chant Hare Krishna. Maybe, what is possible to do is on or about the day of the passing away of either your father or your mother, then you can invite devotees and have a Krishna conscious program. That's nice. And at the end of the program, when prasadam is served, well, you can explain, first of all, that the program's in honor of your either mother or father, or maybe for both of them. And then when you serve prasadam, you ask everyone to please pray for the departed family member. That's nice. You can do that. You can even put their picture on the altar, and you can offer prasadam, not bhoga, but you can offer prasadam to their picture. But generally it's best to do that just like 1 year after their departure. If it's quite some years, you should really just chant Hare Krishna and pray to Krishna to help them. So, Radharani is a lady. But what is the reason we're calling her Radharani and not Mataji? Wow, Radharani Mataji. Anyway, okay, that's a fair question. Fair question. The thing is, because she is Rani, she's Radha Rani, she's the queen of devotion. She's not just another one of the sort of, very sacred general ladies. She's the queen of devotion. Yeah, so we call her Radha Rani, queen of devotion. I have done so many sinful activities in my past life. How can I be absolved of all those sins? Yes, well, that's a very important question, isn't it? So, I haven't seen him for many years actually, but I used to know fairly well. When I was in London in the 70s, I knew one devotee from Israel, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. His name was Vishnu Dutta Das. And he had a darshan with Prabhupada. And in the Middle East, there was, back in the late 60s or around about then, there was what they call the Six-Day War between Israel and some of the Arab nations around in the area of Israel. I mean, you probably know if you follow the news, there's just endless Hare Krishna. There is simply endless tension between the Israelis and the Arabs. Anyway, so this devotee, Vishnu Dutta Das, nice devotee, he told me he had a darshan with Prabhupada, and he told Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, during the 6-Day War, I was a soldier. I was on a machine gun. I killed many people. What should I do? And Srila Prabhupada answered, just chant Hare Krishna. Yeah. So generally speaking, our main process for anything, just our main process, is chanting the holy names. So, yeah. So you are not alone in having done so many sinful activities. I think really, really many devotees, before they became devotees, for example, were eating meat. I mean, some were brought up in vegetarian families. Anyone here brought up from babyhood, childhood, yeah? Devotee family, right. Otherwise, we know it's so common, it's just so common. What can you do? And the past is the past, it's already done. You can't wind back the clock and redo it. So, and you can't just get, anxiety. I ate meat. Oh my God, for the first X number of years of my life. Such is life. Yeah. There's a saying, I forget the exact wording, but it's to the effect that every saint has a past, and every sinner can have a future. It's sort of words to that effect, more or less. So yeah, you're not alone. In fact, the great majority of very serious practicing devotees, they were brought up in that sort of, in a meat-eating environment. And I mean, that's the most common. Then intoxication, it's not unusual that devotees were involved in intoxication, some smoking, and whatever, some intoxication. It's not like practically universal as meat eating is, just about as close to universal as you may get, and in the Western world particularly. Yeah, but intoxication is not uncommon. We had one devotee, he passed away. He was from down in, Mobini. He made the gates on the altar. He made those gates, by hand. And while he was making them, would you believe it, he cut the top off one of his fingers. I mean, not the whole finger, but, like maybe a couple of centimeters or something, whack, off. Yeah, just cut off. He zipped off to the doctor, doctor, I think. He was back in the afternoon making the gate. He passed away though, Radharaman. He was a 60-a-day man. I mean, really serious smoker. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's hard to do more than 60 a day. I don't know if there's enough time. But he was doing 60 a day. He went to a tent campaign, Parthasarathi Maharaj. The next day, 0. And that was it. He was that sort of person, That's it. Yeah, so Anyway, my dear devotee friend, I don't doubt if you say you've done many sinful activities, I'm sure you have, because it's just so common, particularly meat eating, and then, some intoxication, etc. So what to do? Well, stop those things and just chant Hare Krishna. But chant not less than 16 rounds a day and make every effort to chant attentively. Okay. While taking sannyas, how many dandas do the sannyasis receive? Do those dandas symbolize something? Yeah, well, my one's inside there. Why don't you bring out my danda and I'll show you. Well, yeah, anyway, you'll get an idea because it's in the cover, but you'll still get an idea. Okay, so here we have, right, so here, here, there are 3 sticks. There are 3 sticks. And up here, there is another one. You see? There's another one. Yeah. So it's called a tridanda, which means 3 sticks. Danda meaning just stick. This one, yeah. Anyway, and tridanda, 3 sticks, but then there's the 4th one. So the 3 here, the main 3, the bigger 3, they represent body, mind, and words. And the 4th one up here represents the soul. Yeah. And together they represent Lord Vishnu. Yeah. And therefore, not therefore, but then when we go into the temple normally, we sort of touch it, the end, to the ground, that we are dedicating body, mind, words, and soul at the lotus feet of the Lord. Right. Nowadays, we see the Brahmins are so much fallen. Were they cursed at some point of time to have fallen so much? Not exactly cursed, like specifically. Someone actually uttered a curse. But there are 2 things. And the first thing, is arguably the more important thing, but they're both there. The first thing is that it is Kali Yuga, and it is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. You know the verse, let me just, if I can. I don't know if I can. Anyway, there's a verse which describes the nature of the situation in Kali Yuga. Oops. Let me just find the actual verse. We read it not so long ago in Bhakti Vaibhava. Right, okay. It's 1:110, the 10th verse in the whole Bhagavatam. Prayanal Payusha Sabya, Kalavas Min Yugajana, Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya Hupadrita. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives, and women too. It's a generic use of men for humans. Short lives. They're quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Kali Yuga. That's Kali Yuga. Wow. It's really just like that. It's amazing. How bad is Kali Yuga? How difficult is Kali Yuga? Yeah, so that's the first thing that the Brahmins, not just the Brahmins, but everyone, has fallen down because of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is sort of like, if you know what I mean, you could say it's a little bit like, you could say either a vacuum cleaner. You know what it's like. You've got a vacuum cleaner and something's on the floor a little way ahead. You don't have to put the vacuum cleaner on it. You just put it not far from it and the thing gets drawn into it by the power of the vacuum cleaner. Or what's the other? Anyway, that's one example. Or a magnet, yeah. It attracts metal. So Kali Yuga is somewhat like that. If you've got a little tendency in the wrong direction, suddenly you see you're being sucked into it. Yeah. It's a lot like you have to go and just power into it. You just got a little interest. Suddenly you find, you're just being drawn into it. That's the nature of Kali Yuga. So then the second thing, though, is that it's all part of the pastime of the disappearance of Maharaj Parikshit, that he was cursed, improperly cursed, by the unqualified son of a Brahmin, Shringi. And because he was not properly trained, but he had enough training that he knew how to curse. So the whole Brahmin population was affected by his offense. Because, they say, there's a saying, it takes, a family to raise a child, or a village, a village to raise a child. Village to raise a child. So, the understanding is that the village is responsible for the child, not just the parents. Not just the parents. They may be more responsible, but the whole village is responsible for the child. If the child goes off track, it implicates the whole village. So, the Shringi was a Brahmin, and at that age, he should have been properly trained, but he wasn't. So therefore he cursed Maharaj Parikshit unnecessarily. And the whole Brahmin community on the planet became implicated because they were considered responsible because he's a member of the community. Yeah. There's another story, it's in... So therefore, the Brahmin, the whole community fell down. I mean, you get some people nowadays in India, I mean, other than devotees, you get people in India who are Brahmins and they really take it seriously. But there's not so many compared to the number who are born in Brahmin families. But they're degraded. Or, some are degraded. At least they're generally not up to the standard. And some are really degraded. You know that girl who was murdered on the bus? You remember that story? You know the one I'm talking about. That was she eventually died in Singapore. They tried to save her life by taking her to Singapore, but she died in hospital. What did they called her? Nearby, was it? Fearless? Or I think so. So yeah, the gang, these crazy, just demoniac, guys. One of them was a Brahmin. Yeah. One of them was from a Brahmin family, Sharma. Yeah. And I mean, talk about subhuman. It's worse than subhuman. Yeah, so the two things. One is just, the nature of Kali Yuga just does that to people. Unless you're on guard, unless you're reasonably strong yourself, and you got good support, good association, whatever your position is, there'll be a tendency for you to become dragged down. And then there was this situation with Shringi, which affected the whole Brahmin community. And even, it's a bit of a long story. I won't get into the whole story, but you know how in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, verse 2, right? Chapter 4, verse 2, right? Evam parampara praptam. You know that verse? Imam Rajashayo Vidu. Sakale neha mahata yoga nashta. You understand nashta, don't you? Yoga nashta parantapa. The system of yoga was destroyed. Yeah, the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita was handed down from amongst the saintly kings, but in the course of time the succession was broken and the science was lost. So how the succession was broken is described actually in different of the Puranas, and it's particularly described in the purports in Tattvasandarbha by Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan. I won't get into the whole story, it's quite a story. But what happened was the sage Gautama cursed the Brahmins, all the Brahmins. May your knowledge turn to ignorance. And in this way, the succession was broken. And then Vyasadeva came and revived, or Krishna came, but specifically Vyasadeva came and revived the tradition, or the literatures. Right, okay, let's see. What mantras should I chant while offering bhoga to the Lord? Well, that's another very good question. Very practical and very important. If you don't know the mantras, you're going to need help. But first of all, there's the two mantras, Prabhupada's pranam mantras, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, etc., Namaste Saraswati Deve, etc. Then there's a mantra to Lord Chaitanya, Namo Mahavadanyaya, Krishna Prema Pradayate, and then a mantra to Krishna, Namo Brahmanya Devaya, Go Brahmana Hitayacha, etc. So you chant each of these mantras 3 times. First of all, the mantras to Prabhupada 3 times, then the mantra to Lord Chaitanya 3 times, then the mantra to Lord Krishna 3 times. This is the simplest, normal type of arrangement for offering food. If you're somehow in a situation where you just can't even do that, which is not so likely, but not impossible, then if you just chant Hare Krishna a few times with it in your mind that you're offering the food to the Lord, that is not too bad, put it that way. It's not too good either, because it's meant to be like a real offering from the heart. So yeah, I suggest I assume you know the 2 mantras, pranam mantras to Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Namaste Saraswati Devi. I hope you know them. The other 2 mantras you may well not know. Then what you do, you ask one of the senior devotees, to write out those mantras for you. Yeah, like that. And then you can do, it's considered, if you just say those 4 mantras 3 times each nicely, that is considered basically adequate for a proper, simple but proper offering. I knew one devotee, anyway, I've known so many characters in Krishna consciousness. Really. Really a lot. We get at least our share. But when he was out distributing books, he got the idea that all you need to do is he would chant, he'd take whatever it was, he'd buy something in the supermarket or somewhere, some fruit or some nuts or something, and he'd hold it out and he'd chant, Om Tat Sat, thanks a lot. And that same devotee, talk about a character, he would go, at lunchtime, go into the supermarket to buy just some, simple things like that. And while he was in there, devotees, or maybe while he was out, but one way or the other, he would offer the contents of the supermarket. And his logic was, things which are not offerable, Krishna will understand, and they'll be left out. So, just the things which are offerable will be offered. No kidding. And the same devotee, sometimes he would go to the city water reservoir, like, a big lake, and offer the whole lake. So everyone's drinking prasad water. But after a while, the devotees sat him down and said, listen, don't do that. And there was another devotee. He would, when he gets into the shower to take a shower, he'd offer the shower water by chanting the mantras, Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu. That, it's sort of, the 3 Shri Vishnus is kind of borderline, but it's not very good. the lowest level of an acceptable offering is those 4 mantras 3 times each. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. These things, we got to learn these things. Okay, so here we go. I have done training to learn how to do offerings and arti at the ISKCON temple. There are so many mantras while making offerings at the temple. But at home, when I started Krishna consciousness, I was doing it just by chanting Srila Prabhupada's, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, and Krishna's mantra. This is these 4 mantras. Was I doing it wrong? Should I now do all the mantras as done in the temple? Can a non-Brahmin also do offerings elaborately like done in the temple? The better you can do an offering, the better, wherever you are. But, these 4 mantras which you've mentioned and which we mentioned a few minutes ago, that, as we said, that's like the simplest, really like kind of normal way of offering. Yeah. There are simpler, but, you're really getting down to a level where it's not really, it's just strictly emergency offering situations. But now, you can now do your offerings at home according to the standards you've been learning in the temple. I'm sure it takes more time, but if you've got the time and you'd like to do as sort of meaningful an offering as possible, it would be good to do it like whatever system you learned in the temple. Otherwise, if it's a bit too complicated for you, then just keep doing those mantras. Okay, devotees, we got a couple more. I just got to locate them. Where are we? Here. Oh, okay, that's good. Right. These are 3 questions, or 2 questions from Bhakti Vaibhava. Srila Prabhupada mentioned in a purport that Gandhari was envious of Kunti Devi. Then why is Gandhari referred to as an ideal chaste lady? That's a good question. Yeah. Yes, the first thing to understand is that these people are people. They are not machines. They have feelings. And sometimes situations get intense. So, it's a fact, Gandhari was upset when Kunti, they were both pregnant at the same time, but Kunti gave birth, because they were sisters-in-law. Kunti gave birth before Gandhari. And Gandhari was upset because she wanted to give birth first. So she struck her abdomen really hard, and the fetus or the child inside was severely damaged, and so a lump of flesh came out. Yeah. Anyway, the question is, what are the implications for Gandhari? The thing is that she was an ideal chaste lady, meaning she was so chaste to her husband that when she found out, she was in, like you could say, normal physical condition. When she found out she was going to marry a blind man, she put a blindfold around her eyes and wore it for the rest of her life. Yeah. And she was fully dedicated to her husband, even though she knew her husband was a bit of a schmuck, as they say in Jewish circles. Yeah, he was just a bit of not a very good person. Actually quite a bad person. But she stuck with him because she was married to him. Yeah. So, but it's not that Gandhari didn't have emotions, and somehow in that situation, she became affected. And she became angry. Yeah. That doesn't mean she wasn't an ideal, chaste woman. She's a person. Just like if you've got the Veda base, Prabhupada's books and things, on computer, then you would know. Well, you'll find there's a class by Prabhupada in Mauritius. And in that class, a man asks Prabhupada that Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, and Arjuna became pacified. Arjuna was feeling very emotional and concerned and didn't want to fight, and this is very bad and all that. But then Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna became pacified and sort of took control of himself. But the man says that later, during the battle, when Arjuna's son Abhimanyu was killed, it's the second Abhimanyu, was killed, Arjuna became so angry. He vowed to kill the person who was responsible the next day or commit suicide. So he was deeply affected by death, the death of someone close to him. And that was what Krishna was arguing against in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Don't be affected by the deaths of people who are close to you. So the man said to Prabhupada that therefore, I think Bhagavad Gita does not work. Because Arjuna, he went through the whole training of Bhagavad Gita, came out at the other end, yes, I'm okay now. And then lost control when his son was killed. And Srila Prabhupada gave really interesting answer that it's only natural, because he's a person, it's only natural that he became affected by his son's death. But the proof that he remained fixed in terms of Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita, the proof is that he didn't give up his duty. He didn't give up his duty. He became disturbed, but he didn't give up his duty. Therefore, he was properly situated. But otherwise, for people to become upset, in special situations, interpersonal situations and so on, it's just not unexpected, because people are people. People have emotions. Okay, now we got 2 more, and we've got, it looks like 5 more minutes. Dhritarashtra was cursed in his previous life, so his 100 sons died, right? Why and how did Gandhari meet the same fate? Was she cursed too? Well, you know, the thing there is that we do not have information of that. Having said that, there must have been something. There must have been something which she had done to suffer the loss of her sons like that. Just like in the Bhagavatam, there's the story of Bharat Maharaj and how he became a deer in his next life, how he became attached to the baby deer and then took the body of a deer. But, you know, the Bhagavatam says that Bharat Maharaj, before the deer came, while he was still a king, he was on the level of bhava. It was a very high level. It's actually a level of perfection. We are on different levels of practice. He was not on a level of practice. He was on a level of perfection, bhava. So how can someone who is basically perfect fall down like that? So the answer to that is that if someone commits very serious nam aparad, particularly Vaishnav aparad, then even when they are entering perfection, or they're basically in the beginnings of perfection, still the effects of those offenses can attack them and they can fall down, even from a level which is more or less, it's the beginning of perfection, but it's perfection. It's not something other than perfection. So, but this is not discussed in the Bhagavatam, but in Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami explains that because he was on the level of bhava, this must have been caused by Vaishnav or Nam Aparad in a previous life or in the past. Because otherwise, on that level, such things can't really happen. So even though we don't know what exactly it was, but it must have been that type of thing. Okay, very last one. Here we go, ladies. Fasten your seatbelts. Women, to wake up the ladies. Women don't do dandavats. Well, I've got news for you. Some of them do, but not many. Can they greet others saying, please accept my humble obeisances, or please accept my dandavat pranams? Anyway, don't mind if you're watching right now. The only silly question is the one which is not asked. So the answer, to keep it simple, the answer is yes. And if you ask, well, if they can't do dandavats, I mean, they can't do dandavats. There's a tradition of them not doing dandavats. And the reason why there's a tradition, I mean, this is very personal, but because the breasts of a woman are like the source of life, or a very vital part of, the foundation of life, of human beings. Therefore, they shouldn't touch the ground because the ground is contaminated. Yeah, that's where it comes from. But otherwise, don't stress about it too much. It's okay. They can say, please accept my dandavat pranams. Yeah, it's not really wrong. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, devotees, that's our questions for this session. And now, we will distribute prasad. Please come. Please come. Wow, look at this. Look at this. Please come, everyone.